Don't you love it when the story makes the main character spare the enemy, despite the atrocities the enemy caused, and how the main character was so adamant about ending said enemy's life, only to stop before committing the act to say some dumb shit like, "If I do it, I'll be no better than you," or some iteration of that overdone line? Yeah, I hate that bullshit. While we may be tired of the same old tropes and the same old character archetypes because we've seen them done to death, and even worse, done poorly, we all have a few that we're biased of. For each of us, there are a few tropes and archetypes that we're fond of, no matter how often we see them done. We're even susceptible to giving them a pass, even if they aren't executed the best. Off the top of my head, the two tropes that people are tired of seeing the most would have to be plot armor and love triangles. Personally, plot armor is the most annoying, even though I'm able to look past it depending on the severity of the context, and if the situation isn't completely immersion breaking. Even then, if a story ticks enough checkboxes for me, I'm willing to turn a blind eye to the obvious foolishness that is plot armor. In this video, because I believe I have a more refined taste than the average YouTube video dweller, I'm going to give a few tropes and archetypes that I believe are some of the best. I'm aware that there are actual names for tropes and character archetypes that I'm about to run through, but I'm still going to throw out phrases that describes what I'm talking about, because simple research is somehow harder than winging it. I can see how this one is random as fuck. I'm not even gonna lie to you. I'm also not going to imagine what the correct term for this would even be, but let me cook for a bit. This specific trope is sometimes done to create a believable threat and prop up another character. It's done to serve as a benchmark for main characters of a story to compare themselves to. It's also done to create lore, especially when that powerful character is killed before the story even begins. Other times, it's done to motivate a character, whether it is to push others because of the impact of their death in the world of that story, or even something as vain as revenge. Though I imagine a lot of people hate it when plot armor is tied to the circumstance. There are times when an author writes themselves into a corner. Naruto. Logically finding a way to believably defeat an OP-ass character is a difficult task, especially without breaking rules the author already set in place, or without resorting to horrendous plot armor that we all so dearly love, both of which will shit all over the foundation, hype, and writing that's been done to prop up that OP-ass character that is supposed to be eventually defeated. An example where this is successfully done is in Hunter x Hunter with Merum's character. In this example, the OP-ass character is still defeated while further fleshing out the character leading up to their death, tying that into as well as highlighting the themes of the arc, and without having to amp up other characters' plot armor. One of my favorite examples of this is in the underrated manga, Claymore. And yes, I said manga. The anime's ending was a shame considering they had to find a way to end it without adapting the entire story, which sadly made for some rushed bullshit. Anyway, Claymore has a character that was too OP to keep around and actually spearheads the plot of the story. Good old Teresa. Without getting too much into the story, we see her in a mini flashback arc, doing her job of slaying Yoma, which are the demons in the world of Claymore. She went around from town to town, taking them out, in exchange for money for the organization she worked for. She ends up killing a Yoma that had a young girl as a hostage, Claire, who is the actual protagonist of the story. Before I go on any further, let me just say that Claymores are female warriors. They wield massive ass anime swords, have blonde hair, silver eyes, pale skin, and Kolyoko sized foreheads. After undergoing a painful surgery that consists of putting Yoma flesh inside of their own bodies, they become half human, half Yoma. As a result, they can tap into superhuman capabilities in addition to a bit of shape-shifting and sensing Yoki, which is energy that Yoma use and release. Anyway, This is all by using the power of their Ryoma half. But Teresa is a certified boss and scarcely taps into it. Physically, she wasn't the strongest Claymore, but she was skilled due to her proficiency in sensing Yoki. Teresa was a cut above the rest of her peers because while everyone was reaching 50, 60, and 70% of their Ryoma powers, Teresa was chilling at a cool 10%, even when she was being jumped by other Claymores who were numbered 2nd through 5th strongest. The only reason Teresa was killed was because she was caught off guard after showing mercy on one of her peers. Also, for someone to be as skilled as Teresa, whose whole gimmick was sensing Yoki, she should have sensed the sneak attack coming. But her death was needed so Claire could go on to get her vengeance for having the one precious thing in the world taken away from her. So, eventually Claire would go on to willingly become a Claymore to get that job done. Also, real quick, a reboot of Claymore would make a killing in today's anime climate. A dark fantasy anime with a female cast filled with badasses would do pretty good. And I'm saying that even without being the biggest fan of shows where there's fight after fight. If faithfully adapted, Claymore would slap. But just like asking for a second season for a lot of these shows, this will never happen. I feel like this one is a freebie, so I'm going to make this one real quick. I don't have a clear-cut example that I have living rent-free in my head. No, that's actually a bunch of bullshit and lies. Objectively speaking, Gintama has the best illustration of this trope on multiple occasions with different pairings. But anyway, it's nice seeing the dynamic of the main character having to work with their antagonist to take down another enemy, whether it's because the enemy is a greater bad or more dangerous in the scope of the story, or possibly having taken out a mutual friend. Whatever it is, I love this trope. Seeing a pair that has no business working together because of their prior history, but being forced to put it all to the side to take down the issue at hand, is sweet. It's a high form of fan service to me. And hey, don't let the two work in perfect unison as if they've been practicing their fight choreography together. That's the kind of shit to get me all tingly. Another thing that gets the blood pumping for me is when I think about what it means for the two to be working together. Yes, at the time their goals might align, but before they teamed up, you'll look at their ideologies, why they don't see eye to eye and have taken the paths that they currently walk. Extra points if their character arcs parallel each other. But you get to see why the temporary alliance is so powerful. To put all of that to the side and work with your enemy to take down another enemy takes a level of resolve a lot of prideful characters don't have. But when both sides are able to swallow that pride and do the damn thing, it is cinema. As I've stated already, we all have our biases, and sometimes a team-up is beyond fan service when it borders character assassination. Briefly, just to talk some shit about Hunter x Hunter theories, these have been going on for years, and because us Hunter x Hunter fans have been getting more chapters lately, and getting closer to a possible showdown, I do not want to see Kurapika and Chrollo team up. I don't care how cool it would be for them to fight the fourth prince for a plethora of reasons, but no, Kurapika has too much hate in his heart, and Chrollo has tunnel visions concerning Hisoka. I realize I said it's dope when characters who don't see eye to eye and coming together, but not this. I'm sorry. With all of that said, whatever happens, I'll be sure to eat it up because I'm a Hunter x Hunter fanboy. But truth be told, at this point, while we might not always get what we want, what we do end up getting tends to be better than what we expected. At least to me anyway. Togashi stays subverting my expectations. So I just stopped having any. Found family is typically when a group of people who don't share blood are still able to come together to form a familiar bond, care for each other, and love each other as if they've been together the entire time. There's something quite powerful about this that truly speaks to the essence of my lukewarm soul, or at least to the place my heart used to be. Not entirely sure. to not be related by blood but to still be close and drawn to one another is pretty beautiful. Because blood isn't the end-all be-all of family. Some families can be absolute trash, being physically and mentally abusive, unsupportive, and indifferent to you. There are a bunch of different examples where I've seen this done well, but because of recency bias, I'm going to go with Arcane, a ray of light delivered from the heavens above to help bring positive vibrations to this godforsaken world. At the time of writing these points, Act 2 of the second season has just dropped, and man, I'll be honest, I know I'm not the only one who saw it coming from a mile away. Scratch that, miles away from the second episode 2 drop. But we knew Isha was doomed from the start. The last straw was Jinx saying that everyone who got close to them dies. So yeah. Poor Isha got introduced in the second episode and already had a massive red flag stuck to their back the same episode. Evil shit, Arcane. Evil shit. No lie, they couldn't have been more obvious. Kinda like when the camera panned to Ambessa in the first episode, when the remaining council members were having a meeting talking about, "Hey man, someone is leaking intel on our side." Yo, the cameraman just pointed at right at Ambessa in the cut, like he was trying to tell everyone in the room what was going on behind the scenes. Seriously, couldn't have been more obvious who was behind the orchestrated attack. But I digress. The funny thing about the found family trope to me, with a show that has a cast filled with well-written characters, it's easy to get attached. Throw in a child with an adorable design into the mix that reminds Jinx of their younger self, give Jinx the responsibility of looking after someone else, playing the role of the older sister, and having Jinx play that similar role that Silco played for her, all while having Isha serving as an anchor to help keep Jinx grounded from the mess that is her head. Yeah, all of these things carry the potency to make a grown-ass man like me cry, even though I knew it would inevitably happen. The reason why such a predictable moment could still evoke such emotion out of me was because the writers did an amazing job crafting Jinx's and Isha's dynamic. I believed in the limited time we've seen the two together, having the cute big sis little sis relationship. To have Isha view Jinx as her savior when the two first met with the goons surrounding them, and Isha viewing Jinx as the coolest person to ever walk on Earth, wanting to have blue hair and tattoos like Jinx, to building Jinx's image as a symbol of hope for the citizens of Zaun, so that they could see Jinx the same way Isha views her, which was a hero. It's all so damn well done. Jinx reverting back to hearing the voices in her head, as she did, similarly to pretty much the whole first season, when Zavika tells her that Isha got taken away, was such a nice touch. And that is possibly a good indication of the spiraling our girl Jinx is going to go through in the final act. You can't help but get all mushy when you see Jinx and Isha together, as you also feel how Isha being in Jinx's life has started to slowly heal Jinx. You can't help but root for that as a viewer, but fuck, that 6th episode, man. There's something about a character that comes across as a complete asshole but has layers and a certain warmness that is hidden behind the rough exterior. Sometimes that warm interior is only accessible for certain characters.
Hey, yo, what the fuck?
Sometimes they only remove the mask for those close to them, or those they care deeply for, even if they have a difficult time showing that they care. These characters tend to usually be tsunderes, but I'll be honest, sometimes tsunderes can be annoying, especially when their actions are done for the sake of comedy and those actions never evolve into something more. Anyway, I love cold to warm character archetypes mainly because of the nature of the relationship with other characters they eventually warm up to. For me, the Big Don, who was one of the faces of this archetype, is Kratos in the 2018 God of War game, one of my favorite games of all time. If you followed Kratos' journey from the original Greek trilogy, you know that the man is the personification of Black Air Force energy. The man fought with gods and came back from the grip of death on more than one occasion just so he could get his lick back. Not to simplify Kratos' character, but 2 words that could be used to describe him before the 2018 game would have been vengeful and wrathful. Fast forward to the 2018 game, and after having his vengeance, we see a more mellow Kratos, one who has recently lost his wife in this new land. He has a son, Atreus, who he doesn't have the closest relationship with. It's not until deeper on their journey to bring his wife's ashes to the highest peak in all the realms that we see him softening up to his son. It's not that Kratos is incapable of warmth, but rather that he fears what will become of his son and learning the truth about him, and how his sins will affect Atreus. The bridge from cold to warm is not possible without some form of development, which adds depth to a character and helps us learn more about said character, why they are the way that they are, why they do the things that they do. It creates an enticing dynamic between characters. While liking Kratos as a violent demon, while I was a teenager thinking Kratos destroying and being drenched in the blood of his enemies was one of the coolest things ever, I loved the progression of his character in the 2018 game. This was one of the games I'd skip through and watch YouTubers blind playthroughs who have never experienced the previous God of War games, and watching their initial reaction to the callous mask that Kratos wore and watching them fall in love with his character the more he warmed up to his son, and learning why Kratos is and acts the way that he does. Cold to warm characters make for a good watch. The villainous protagonist is exactly what it sounds like. The main guy is the bad guy. Now this one varies from story to story for me. There is a spectrum in villainy, and while I prefer them to have some level of depth depending on the story, I can settle with evil just for the sake of being evil. I can enjoy a villainous son of a bitch with no redeemable qualities, while also enjoying a villainous son of a bitch who I sympathize with. I wish more stories had these sorts of characters at the focal point of them, as opposed to the hero archetype or even the morally gray character. I'm not saying that the villainous protagonist has to reign victorious by the end of the story, although that would be a breath of fresh air, despite the kind of message that might send to viewers. Oswald from The Penguin comes to mind. Again, because of the recency bias, not gonna lie to you. Regardless, he is a well-executed villainous protagonist. Now, excluding the final episode where everybody and their blind grandmothers can see that Oz is filth beyond redemption, you might watch this show leading up to that episode and say, man, that penguin fellow loves his mom and he treats his sidekick with respect, compared to those dime a dozen twirly mustache villains who act like complete dicks just because they woke up with a crick in their neck one morning and said fuck this world. Like many residents in the world of Batman and Gotham, many of these characters are sick in the head, and their motivation for the things that they do isn't always black and white. I'm not even going to touch the economic state of Gotham itself, and how much rent must cost for its residents to continue living there, with criminals going in and out of jail as if they're walking around a revolving door. Nor will I touch why Bruce doesn't already admit himself into Arkham, because doing the same thing over and over is the definition of insanity. Yet he keeps taking down his rogue gallery, only for them to be back on the streets in no time. And yes, I realize this applies to a bunch of hero archetypes and stories, which is why the villain being the main character changes up the pace a bit. Getting back on track though, we can see Oz having some redeemable qualities, but by the end of the show they're all pissed away. Even if you say he still loves his mother despite all that's happened, his reasoning comes from a twisted origin. And all of this makes Oz a compelling character. A piece of shit, yeah, but still a compelling character. I don't need a villain protagonist, or any villain for that matter, to have a redemption arc, which is also to be appreciated at times, but it's just nice to watch a dope-ass villain go around doing villainous shit. Now, does that make me immoral for wanting to see the bad guy win? Maybe, and that's fine, although you don't have to judge me too harshly on that, okay? Some more notable characters who fit this archetype to the T would be Light from Death Note. While he might have started with noble intentions, he quickly developed the god complex. Another quick one would be my boy Franklin Saint from Snowfall, a D1 crash out. Shit, the D1 crash out. And no, not like them weak ass crash outs everyone online likes to label just because they see somebody mad and yelling at a video camera. I'm talking a real crash out. One where people's livelihoods and millions of dollars are on the line. Another self-explanatory one here. This one tends to get a bad rep because of its execution. Also because it can sometimes be on a bit of the boring side. Sometimes these characters come off as robotic and bland because they are void of emotion, or just straight up don't understand them. So off the rip, it can be difficult to relate to them. They might have a non-existing personality, but I'm a firm believer that you never have to relate to a single aspect of a character, and you can still be able to enjoy them nonetheless. I will say that this type of archetype works best with a character who is oblivious and dead serious about whatever they're doing. A character who is the quintessential demonstration of this is no one other than Violet from Violet Evergarden. When you start the show, you realize that Violet shows no expression on her face. She speaks matter-of-factly, and quite literally, which makes it difficult to understand others around her. Most importantly, she doesn't comprehend what emotions are, particularly love, and it's that word love and trying to learn what it means that sets Violet on this journey as a doll, where she listens and interprets feelings into words on paper. Violet was adept on the battlefield, thinking nothing of the blood she shed, as she only followed orders from her major, Gilbert. While she didn't know it at the time, she loved Gilbert, as he served as a father figure to her. His last words to her were that he loved her before he presumably died on the battlefield. So while she unknowingly felt it, she wished to learn what her father figure had meant when he said those final words to her. The show is quite episodic, but each episode illustrates Violet slowly getting a better grasp of what it means to feel, to love, to empathize with others, and to get a better sense of her own emotions as well as others. All of which is reflected in the letters that she writes for others as she continued to improve until she was a well-known doll. When you are this robotic person who doesn't understand the nuance of emotion, you're sort of this blank canvas. So when that blank canvas goes on a journey to learn and understand why things are the way that they are, it's easy and satisfying to see their development. I think it's one of the best ways to humanize a character who might initially come off as boring or bland. Now, what I'm about to say isn't groundbreaking. Like a delicious dish, the sum of the ingredients make it what it is. When you have multiple of these combinations that gel well together, you have a fire-ass story. Of course, there are a ton of tropes and archetypes that are generally well beloved, and even a bunch more that are scorned with a fiery passion. But that right there is a whole other bag of worms to get into, and this video has gone on long enough. So then, until next time.